Thank you so much for joining our International Wildlife Coexistence Network Education Forum series. Today's forum is about coexisting with sharks. My name is Louise Borignac and I am the International Project Liaison here at IWCN, and I'll be the host of your forum. Sharks have existed for over 450 million years, and over that period have evolved into the apex oceanic predators that we know today. And sharks are essential to healthy oceans that we all depend on. But before we dive deep into this topic, I would like to provide an acknowledgement of country. This is a show of respect for traditional owners and the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country. In Sydney, where I am based, this is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We recognise their continuing connection to land, to waters, to wildlife and to culture. We pay our respects to elders, past, present and emerging. May we join together to build a future based on compassion, justice, hope and reconciliation for all. This next hour is going to be absolutely fascinating. We have two fantastic speakers. Firstly, Dr. Roger Koenig. Roger,
hello, everybody.
Roger is one of our expert advisors at IWCN. Roger is a scientist. He's an underwater photographer and a freediver based in Sydney, Australia. I'm based in Australia. He's not based in Sydney. He uses his imagery as a means to promote environmental awareness. By combining scientific knowledge with wild encounters, he empowers divers and swimmers to read and understand shark behaviour and have safer interactions. Roger believes that environmental awareness depends on both experiencing nature's wonders and understanding their importance. Our second speaker is Andre Borell. Say hi. Yeah. He is the director of a newly released documentary film called Envoy Shark Cull. This incredible documentary really focuses on the threats facing sharks and other marine species from Australia's long-running and lethal shark hazard reduction program. This program includes nets around beaches and large baited hooks known as drum lines to intentionally capture and drown sharks. Of course, keeping ocean goers safe in the water is of paramount importance, yet the effectiveness of these kill-based strategies is unproven and the ecological welfare and economic costs are very high. So at the end of our forum, there'll be a question and answer. So please, as we're going through our forum, please pop your questions in the chat. I'd also like to introduce you to my team. Firstly, Cynthia Hoffman. She's our communications director. Thanks, Cynthia. Alison Miller is our communications associate, and Aspen, who is our communications intern. What a rocking team. So let's get into it. From a very young age, I've been absolutely fascinated by sharks, by their size, by their power and their grace. But it wasn't until I became a certified scuba diver in 2012 that I really experienced their world. And since then, I've had so many positive and thrilling encounters with sharks. It was almost the complete opposite of the story I'd been told my whole life, that I needed to fear sharks, that they were man-eaters and out for our blood. And yes, there have been human fatalities. Last year, there were 10 fatalities worldwide, which is obviously very unfortunate. But sharks are actually one of the most safest predators to be around. Here at the International Wildlife Coexistence Network, we believe that education is key to conservation and also to coexistence. And we focus on various ways to keep both humans and wildlife safe from harms, and also to repair our relationship to the natural world that we are completely dependent on for survival. I will now pass over to our director, Susan Aisha Stone, who's prepared a pre-record to give you a bit more insight into our new organisation that was 6 months old last week, and to let you know about our IWCN and what we've achieved.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining our forum today. My name is Suzanne Aisha Stone, and I'm the director of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network. The objectives of the IWCN Forum series is to raise awareness of critical conservation and animal welfare issues and related opportunities for coexistence strategies that help us work with nature instead of against her. IWCN is 6 months old this week, and we thank our supporters for helping us reach this important milestone. We've done a lot in 6 months. Our mission is to empower communities around the globe to coexist with wildlife, and we achieve this by providing expert interdisciplinary assistance, training, collaboration, research, and more. Our achievements so far include developing an international interdisciplinary team of scientists, agricultural managers, researchers, ethicists, economists, educators, government specialists, indigenous leaders, technical engineers, and others who are helping to pioneer new ways to live with wildlife. There's so much more to tell you about, most of which you can find on our website, and check our links below. Our main purpose for providing this update is to say thank you for joining us, for supporting us, and if you haven't yet become a member, please consider doing so now, because we want to use all of our efforts combined together to expand and continue our efforts on behalf of wildlife around the world. As we turn to this forum, we know that there's parallels between the cruel and unselective methods to kill sharks using nets and drum lines, which is a large hook baited with meat or fish to indiscriminately catch sharks and drown them. And trapping and snaring of terrestrial wildlife is so similar, which impacts also target and non-target species. It's important for us to raise awareness of these issues and to move beyond these lethal measures where we're having such a deep impact on wildlife, and instead find ways to coexist with them. Understanding species that we share the planet with and replacing fear with wonder is our best hope to raise a consciousness for coexistence and repair our relationship with nature. We need your help to continue our work, and we want you to be part of our team by volunteering, by signing the pledge on our website, by supporting us with your funding and your time. We are here to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I will now pass over to Roger. Roger will share his experiences and knowledge of making safer interactions with sharks that he teaches in his education program. Over to you, Roger.
All right, so from the beginning, thanks for having me here. Great to be talking about this subject that is very important for me and for the oceans and for the safety of everybody that shares the water with sharks. So my name is Roger Koenig. I'm a freediver instructor, underwater photographer, and a researcher in neuroscience. I'm originally from Chile, and my journey into the ocean started rather late in life, 8 years ago when I came to Australia. And to be honest with you, at the beginning, I was really scared about sharks. And that might be because my first experience with the idea of sharks was through the movie Jaws. In that movie, sharks are depicted as these bloody, thirsty creatures that want to eat us. And that idea stuck in my head well before I encountered any shark. And to my surprise, when I finally met a shark, this is the actual footage of my first encounter with a shark in the Great Barrier Reef, I realized that I was very wrong, and this idea was very false. And I found that these creatures are fascinating, elegant, strong. And in this very video, as you often will find, this shark is more afraid of me than I am from it. And that started a long journey to try to understand these creatures and connect with them. And I've been very, very fortunate to have freedived and photographed these sharks in many settings and met many species. And one important thing that I want to say is that most of my interactions with sharks have been organic interactions. That means that I haven't attracted them with food, and I've been able to know them in their natural behavior, far from feeding frenzies triggered by food. And also, most of my interactions with sharks and encounters have been by purely chance. So I know one or two things about encountering sharks in the wild, and that's what I want to talk to you about. And yes, I have been freediving with the most iconic shark species, like the gray whites and tiger sharks, and not in a cage. And I want to talk about what I've learned through these experiences. And the most important thing I have learned about sharks is that they can communicate. Like, they have a language. They use their bodies to communicate in which state of mind they are. This body language is very widespread in the animal kingdom. We humans use it. It's been estimated that up to half of the information we convey is through body language. Sharks use it way more than that. And they will reveal cues about their intentions through the body language. And we can read them and understand their state of mind. And very importantly, we can communicate back to them. So understanding this hidden languages, if you wish, with at the end is actually very easy to get because we use it too. Is the key to have safer interactions. So using this body language, how do we know when a shark is not happy, when it's angry? So when sharks are not happy, they will display something called agonistic displays. That's the scientific name. And it's a warning behavior associated with conflict and competition. So the important part here is warning. So they will show and display these behaviors before getting into physical confrontation. And this is a way for them to resolve conflict in a non-violent manner. So that means that for us, it's a window of opportunity to de-escalate interactions before aggression. So this figure here shows what a happy shark looks like in A and an angry shark in C. In the elements that we will be looking for to spot an angry shark or an agonistically displaying shark is the pectoral depression. So they will put the pectoral fins down. That's a very telling sign. Snout rise, so they will point their heads up. At the same time, they will arch their backs and they will swim with jerky movement. So these are very prototypical ways that sharks show that they're not happy with us. Other things that we can look for is exaggerated swimming movement. So they will swim with very ample movements, but without moving a lot or very efficiently. Gapping, which is opening and closing the jaws, showing the teeth, really, like what dogs would do. Lateral swimming, so swimming side to side among sharks or beside us to probably see who's bigger. And frontal approach. So these are very prototypical displays of agonistic behavior. So this is a picture of what an agonistic behavior looks like in real life. So you can see the depression of the pectoral fins, the arch back, and a frontal approach. So this very shark is not happy with us being around. So what should we do if we see a displaying shark in the wild? So first and foremost is facing the shark, maintaining eye contact, swimming upright. And this is very simple, but surprisingly, this is the most deterring thing that you can do. And this serves a few purposes. First, you acknowledging the shark and its behavior. You telling them that you're there and reacting to their presence. That will first allow you to start maintaining and asserting hierarchy. The other thing is that sharks are opportunistic predators, so they want a prey that it can be caught in surprise. So by reacting to them, you are not that prey anymore. And swimming upright make us look in a way that is dissimilar to the natural preys. Second thing is backing away while staying calm. And staying calm is key here. So shark love injured fish and other marine animals. And what injured animals do is to splash in the water. So that's a little bit like ringing the bell for a shark. So you don't want to do that. You want to swim away purposefully and calmly. The other thing is look for more sharks. So oftentimes we see a shark, we lock into that shark, and there are other sharks around, and that's not good because as you paying attention to one shark, another can be getting a little bit too close. And this is a little bit more important on species that are known to chase impacts or shivers, as it's called, a group of sharks. As whalers, duskies and bronzes would do that often, come in packs. And if you see one, expect another one to come. As opposed to more lonely species as tiger sharks, for example. So if a shark is displaying to you, most likely is not interested in you as such, but is interested in the area you're occupying. So maybe you are next to the fish it wants to eat, the place it's hunting, or it's interested in your fish if you're spear fishing. That's very often. So go away from those places and surrender your fish. Sheltering using structures. So the idea here is to limit the angle in which sharks can approach, and also making the scanning of potential sharks coming close a little bit easier for you. So you can use reef walls, boats, whatever you have to kind of shrink the area that you have to attend to. If they are coming a little bit too close, best practice is to maintain distance with any material you have. That can be fins, that can be spear guns. Of course, don't shoot them because you're gonna make them angrier. Use your camera or your hand if worse comes to worse. This is very unlikely, but often if you push them away, that would be it. So the adverse shark interactions can happen in very many flavors. What we talk about is agonistic interactions, but there can be other interactions too. And the guidelines we revised, they are valid for all these interactions, really. The difference here is that you would put a little bit more accent on it, or importance in some elements, like, for example, as asserting hierarchy, or keeping calm. That can be very crucial depending on the type of interaction. This is a subject that is a little bit deeper, and you need to understand a little bit better the language of the sharks. So this is, for example, one of the things we revise in in a deep way in the shark retreats interaction that I run. So what happens in the case that you're not able to react and respond and even see a behaving shark, but they're still there? This is the case when you, for example, surfing on the surface, you won't see the shark until it's very late and it's very close. So the smarter things to do here is to avoid shark completely. And there are many guides written in these subjects, many very good guides. And one of the best is written by my friend, Madison Stewart. So if you want to have a read of this, and I strongly encourage it, this is the link. And what we will aim to do in these situations to avoid sharks is to go away from places where they hunt or there's prey for them. So you don't get mistaken by one of them. So first thing is go away from bait balls. Bait balls are a group of fish that are getting preyed upon. So they are directed to the surface of the ocean, and you will see fish jumping out of the water, birds diving down. So you want to avoid these places. Rain runoffs and river mouths. So these canalize materials that smell and taste like the things sharks like to eat. Many sharks are scavengers and they like things that smell rotten. So they can be runoffs from farms, sewage, and that's very, very yummy for sharks. So you want to go away from those things. Carcasses and animal remains, same idea. Don't go in the ocean when they are around. Fishing vessels, sharks have learned how to, that commercial fishing vessels mean an easy meal. Dawn and dusk, they are more active hunting, and deep water and drops off. So to put all this into context, so we have to acknowledge sharks are dangerous animals, and we want to play it safe with them. But at the end of the day, sharks are responsible for around 10 fatalities per year worldwide. So that's 10 fatalities too many, if you ask me. And that's not good. But compared to other predators, that's relatively a low number. And to put things into perspective, gas and food, things that we encounter every day, kill sharks, kill people in orders of magnitude that many times higher. And nobody is really completely afraid of gas in food, so just to put things into perspective. So the take-home message of my talk is that I invite people to learn about sharks, connect with them, and learn that these are wonderful creatures that are very important for marine ecosystems. They keep the balance of the species in the ecosystems. They prune the weak and sick. They really amazing creatures. They've been reigning in the oceans for almost 500 million years. Yes, billion with a B. And they are totally amazing and incredible creatures. They will teach you a lot about the ocean. They teach you a lot about nature and a lot about yourself too. So if you want to learn more about interacting with sharks through the retreats I run, or about other marine life, check my website and my Instagram. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roger, for that fascinating presentation. I'm just going to get you to stop sharing your screen.
Yes.
I feel like my world has been expanded so much, just really understanding that language of sharks and what to look for. So I think this education is so important to keep people and sharks safe. It should be taught in schools. It should be taught everywhere. So thank you so much. Now we're going to hear from our second wonderful speaker, Andre Borell. He's a successful entrepreneur who's grown multiple businesses in various industries. Andre co-founded the Hype Project in 2018 with a single goal in mind: to make films that matter. Andre's inspiration for Envoy shark Cull started in 2014 with the Western Australian shark Cull. And this inspiration has continued as Queensland and New South Wales continue to operate this lethal shark program, even after the Western Australian Cull was abandoned due to a lot of public pressure and the fact that it wasn't reaching its objective to keep ocean goers safe. Andre is driven by an unwavering creative vision and burning desire to facilitate change. So what's going to happen? We're firstly going to show the new film's trailer. Then we'll hear from Andre. And Alison's going to share screen.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Lou. That's been a while since I've seen that trailer. I probably haven't watched that for 6 months or so. That was, it reminded me of the whole process and brought a lot of memories back. Look, I'll start with talking a little bit about how I got involved in this topic. And look, it is relatively similar to Lou and to Rog in the sense that, you know, interested in kids, interested in sharks as I was a kid. Always, you know, watched Jaws, Deep Blue Sea, but I think I never had that real fear of them, more of a fascination. I think I saw them for what they were, which was entertainment, you know what I mean? But it made me interested in sharks. So grew up in Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland, one of the states where this culling occurs. And it's 1 hour from the Sunshine Coast and 1 hour from the Gold Coast, the two main beach holiday hotspots, I guess, in the state and in Australia. And I did not realize what was happening literally 500 meters from our beaches until mid to late 20s. I'm in my early 30s now. Mid to late 20s was when I actually learned what was going on, literally under my nose. So that all came about from, again, similar to Lou, getting into scuba diving, doing my scuba cert, actually seeing sharks in the wild and seeing just like I always knew Jaws and Deep Blue Sea and those kinds of films were a bit hammed up, a bit dramatized, but I didn't realize just how much until you're eyeball to eyeball with them underwater. So that was a real eye-opener for me. Then I started following more ocean conservation organizations on social media and being more attuned to these issues. That's when I learned. It wasn't until I did my scuba cert, got involved in the issue, got interested in the issue, that I learned what was happening just off our coastline, which is hinted at in that trailer. And we're about to explain it a little bit more as to exactly the mechanics of how it works. So look, my I guess awareness and interest in this issue came later in life as well. And when I learned what was happening under my nose, where I grew up, and went to the beach on every school holidays as I was growing up, it was a bit embarrassing, really, and pushed a lot of my buttons as to how stupid this program is. In a second we will play a short excerpt from the film. I think it's 3 or 4 minutes long, that really in detail explains what these shark nets and drum lines are, how they function, how they don't function. So we'll play that in a second. Before we go into that, I would just like to say, I think if there's 20 minutes of knowledge that you can gain on sharks, I think Roger's presentation it was such a good summary. And having, you know, not being an expert myself, but having spent a lot of time underwater with these animals, filming them, just bang on. Everything in there was spot on. And if that was taught to everyone, you know, in schools or something like that, I think our culture would have a very, very different view of sharks and would have less negative shark interactions. So we can go to the excerpt from Envoy Shark Cull now, but just what was covered there by Rog, so important.
Australian beaches, renowned for their long unbroken surf line and clean white gold sand, are among the most beautiful in the world. This lovely beach is a typical example.
Shark nets were first introduced off the east coast of Australia in 1937, with drumlines following soon after. That's the very same decade Qantas first started flying between Australia and London. Flights could fit just 10 passengers, had 21 stopovers, and took a total of 12 days. Our world has evolved beyond recognition since then, but shark nets and drumlines have stayed fundamentally the same. Shark nets in Queensland are 186 metres wide by 6 metres, hang from the surface and sit in water 12 metres deep. Shark nets in New South Wales are 150 metres by 6 metres, anchored to the seafloor, also in water 12 metres deep. Both programs cover only a tiny portion of any given beach, allowing sharks ample opportunity to swim over, under, around, and towards beaches. In fact, a high percentage of sharks are caught inside the nets. They've already been to the beach and are peacefully making their way back out to sea. Drumlines use a large buoy on the surface to suspend a baited industrial fishing hook dangling below on heavy-duty chains. They chum the waters, attracting sharks in the hopes of hooking them. If anyone in a snorkel and fins can navigate around this technology, why would we think that sharks can't?
People think that shark incidents are happening at a higher rate than what they really are. Being bitten by a shark is extremely unlikely. Unfortunately, when there is a shark bite incident, the media jump onto this and they report it over and over again.
There's a rogue shark out there, the Jaws mentality, right? That it's got the taste for human blood and it's not gonna stop until it, so it's just like that kind of mentality, it's so false and it's like a lie, basically, when it comes down to it.
When I've seen or heard on the news that there was a shark attack, my heart fully sinks, and it's a really terrible feeling because, one, you know that someone's just been through something traumatic and the media's taken advantage of that, and two, you know that that means bad news for the sharks.
Drama and sensationalism sells, and so for generations now, the media has capitalized off of demonizing them.
Drone footage is now coming out, particularly from New South Wales, and the photography is awesome. The colours and the shapes, and you see surfers and you see the silhouette of a shark in the water. And the headline is, "Shark Stalks Surfer." And no, the shark's just doing its thing. It probably hasn't even seen the surfer.
The number of times that negative language about sharks is repeated for every shark bite incident, the number of reports is astounding. The average is in the 30s.
But the media will report on them because these incidents can be tragic, they can be traumatic. We hear words like maul, man-eater, attack, but more accurately, these interactions are classified as just that, interactions. It's a bump or an investigative bite. We all understand that those bites can be very tragic and traumatic, but it's very, very rarely and almost never an actual attack. And that feeds into the public psyche of what they think. They think the sharks are out there hunting them, and that's really not at all what's happening.
The tolerance that sharks show for humans, being such capable predators as they are, it never ceases to astonish me. And people don't give them credit for that. They swim past surfers, swimmers, and divers all day, every day, and it's so rare that they make a mistake. You think about how many mistakes humans make, and it's just, I wish that they got that credit and that made the news, because that's something that happens every day, and not the extremely rare mistaken identity bite.
All right, the audio was a bit out of sync with the visual there, but I think the audio told the story of what this equipment is, even if it was a little bit out of time with the graphics. You can see the whole film on Discovery Plus right now if you're in the US, and if you're in Australia, you can go to watch.envoyfilm.com.au and watch it there. So that was just a small snippet. Sorry that it was out of sync. Don't know what happened there, but yeah, you can watch the film there right now or after this. So look, what I really want to go into, there's so many issues that we can go into as to specifically how poorly this issue of coexisting with sharks is managed in Australia. There's so many issues we can go into, so many issues. In fact, we made a whole 90-minute film on all the issues, but we won't have time to go into all of them here. But what I really do want to talk about is Roger's talked about education, which is super, super important, and understanding to read these animals and coexist with these animals. What I really want to talk about is technology that can be used to coexist with these animals as well. So getting shark nets and drumlines out of the water because they're proven not to be effective is the number one thing that needs to happen in Australia, and also in other areas where this happens, which is only 2 other places in the world. South Africa and Reunion Island are the only 2 other places that use lethal shark mitigation. So that needs to stop. But then obviously the next question becomes, so what do you do instead? How can we coexist with these animals without killing them? And look, the short answer is there's so many technologies that we can use that is effective at providing protection to swimmers or surfers or whatever ocean user group you might be talking about, and doesn't require killing sharks. Now, I'll go into a couple of them in a second, but the point I really, really want to make here, and super important to make, is these technologies that I'm about to talk about are effective. You know, they have very high proven levels of effectiveness, but nothing's ever going to be 100% effective. But the important thing is here, when comparing it to shark nets and drum lines, we need to acknowledge that those are 0% effective. This is an 83-year experiment we've run here in Australia, and no correlation to reduced shark bites at beaches that have nets and drum lines. The government cling to a line of there has been a reduction in fatalities at beaches where shark nets and drum lines exist. That is true. There has not been a reduction in shark bites. Now, the reason there's been a reduction in fatalities is medical responses have progressed. Medical intervention has progressed. Every single beach that has either a shark net or a drum line also has a lifeguard tower. So you're saying there's a reduction in fatalities, and as the government, and you're claiming it's due to you putting nets and drum lines in the water. That's just not true. You haven't reduced the incidence of shark bite there, and first responders and lifeguards have reduced the incidence of fatality there. But you claim that proves the effectiveness of your program. So really important to establish shark nets and drum lines do not work, period, full stop. So when we talk about any other technology, anything's better than shark nets and drum lines because they don't work. So some of the technologies we can talk about that are really, really promising and already proving effective are drone surveillance. So when you're in areas, say most of New South Wales has quite good water clarity. The southern part of the state of Queensland in Australia has quite good water quality. Drone surveillance is excellent. It can spot a shark by the silhouette. It can tell whether what species of shark it is and whether it poses a risk to swimmers or surfers or not. And it can clear the water. You can have an alarm attached to the drone. The bonus of drones as well is they can also, on the larger drones, they can carry personal flotation devices. And if there's a drowning happening in an area, it can drop a personal flotation device as well. So there's a bonus with some of this technology as well. The important thing to mention there too is we have almost 300 drowning victims in Australia every year, and most years 1 to 2 shark bite fatalities. So really need to put things in perspective there. These shark spotting drones are going to save more drowning victims, really, because it's the far bigger risk. The other technology that's really promising is barrier technology. So putting a barrier in place, which clearly from that example we have from the excerpt of the film, a shark net is not. A lot of the society, a lot of the public here in Australia think that a shark net is a barrier and that it goes all the way to the bottom and that encloses the beach. It is not. It's just a fishing device. So, but there is actual real barrier technology that goes from the seafloor to the surface, and it can actually keep sharks away from people. There's 3 different really promising kinds. One is an electrical fence, essentially, that overwhelms the ampulla of Lorenzini of the shark, and they don't want to swim through it. One is an actual physical barrier, so essentially a fence, a rigid fence, that's flexible enough to move with the tide and the waves, but not so flexible that it would entangle or kill anything. So a fence sort of barrier, and then there's also a solution out of South Africa called a shark-safe barrier, which is it essentially biomimics a forest of kelp. So sharks do not like to swim through forests of kelp. For fear of entanglement is the hypothesis. So you can actually erect a barrier that looks like a forest of kelp, and sharks won't swim through it. Now, just in case you have a brave shark or a bit more of a confident shark, these also have magnets installed in the things that biomimic kelp. So there is also an electrical repellent should there be a bit of a braver shark. There's a backup in that solution as well. The other one is taking it into your own hands. So wearing personal electrical deterrents that exist for the bottom of surfboards to wear on your ankle, whatever it might be. Those personal electrical deterrents are proven to work. They turn away sharks nearly all of the time. So yeah, taking it into your own hands. There's also, shark bite resistant wetsuits being developed at the moment. There's all these different solutions that you can take this into your own hands, beyond what Rog said, which is obviously learning to interact with them safely, but also protecting yourself from them. Should you, not see one coming or something like that. There's ways to protect yourself, and that can be an electrical repellent. That can be what you wear. There's so many better ways to coexist with sharks than these programs that we run in Australia. France run Reunion Island, and South Africa run in the state of KwaZulu-Natal. So many better ways to coexist than the current archaic, outdated way, which is just killing stuff. That doesn't even work. That really doesn't even work. So look, that's really the main things that I wanted to discuss today. Like I said, though, I think Rogers is so important. And if you want to learn more about what I've discussed or the issue at large that we have here in Australia, it is a complex issue. There's a lot of legal complications to it. There's obviously ethical complications to it. It's a very layered issue. So there's a 90-minute documentary, Envoy Shark Cull, on Discovery Plus, or if you're in Australia, you can get an online premiere. It's not on streaming yet, but you can get an online premiere at watch.envoyfilm.com.au. And I hope it does a far better explanation of all the issues we're facing here and the better ways we can coexist than what I just did. So yeah, check it out.
Thank you so much, Andre, for that presentation. And I did watch his documentary earlier this week. It's absolutely compelling. It's a must watch. It's up there with Blackfish and The Cove to really expose what is going on with our program that's killing sharks. So thank you so much for bringing this issue to the forefront. We're going to put in the chat. It's watch.envoyfilm.com. So please go and have a look, educate yourself. Education is the key to conservation. And I think just in summary, both Roger and Andre really highlighted the need for us to change, to modify our behavior and to make more informed decisions to keep us safe, aided by, the raft of non-lethal deterrents and shark spotting drones that is out there. You can do a search to find out which beaches do have shark spotting drones, and the technology is becoming really good, combined with AI technology, so they can, identify which species is in the water. And although sharks are predators and we do need to show a healthy respect for them, when we are in their homes, we need not be so fearful and we can coexist. I'm just going to pass over to Cynthia, who's got a few closing messages, and then we're going to have a question and answer, so please stick around for that.
And I'll only be a minute because I have lots and lots of questions from everybody who's joined us tonight. So and I have plenty of my own. So this was a super exciting and informative presentation, guys. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I know I learned an incredible amount and have even greater respect for sharks. I too grew up with the, Jaws fear in my life. My husband won't go into the beach unless it's clear because he's afraid of sharks. So, so thank you for sharing all of this information. It's really amazing how valuable these species are to the ecosystem and how crazy humans are about trying to exterminate them. So this was really incredibly educational. And the International Wildlife Coexistence Network was created just for these types of issues. Our goal really is to educate people about the crises for certain species and to identify some of the amazing tools. Some of them are super simple. Some of them are, you know, much more high tech. But there are a lot of really good solutions that are far more effective than extermination of species. And we all really need to learn how to get along more with our fellow wildlife. The IWCN is doing this forum series and will continue to do so. And now that you guys have joined us as part of our coexistence family, we'll be sure to let you know when we have more forums in the future. We also have, thanks to Lou, an amazing resource library on our website, wildlifecoexistence.org. And it's free to anybody who wants to access it. There's lots and lots of research and papers on different tools for different species on how you can coexist with them. And we also are in the throes of just starting to prepare for our first, what we are nicknaming a coexathon, which will identify a couple of wildlife conflict situations and bring scientists from around the world together to be able to explore those situations, figure out what opportunities there are to be able to allow those communities to better coexist with wildlife. So I hope that we'll be able to do those on a fairly regular basis too in the future. So as Suzanne said, we're only 6 months old, but we're small and powerful and mighty, and have amazing people like Roger and Andre as part of us. And we also have a really impressive team of Coexistence Council members that, like I said, are scientists and experts from around the world. But we can't do these things without support from you all. Great conservationists that you are, spending your evening or your morning, depending on where you are with us today. So thank you so much. Go to wildlifecoexistence.org. Help us out with a donation. Check us out on social media. We're on all the different platforms. And really, you know, the most important thing is to share the information that you learned today with your friends and family. We post a lot of different things on our social media about different tools and techniques. Get on there, share those on your social media platforms, and let's have me stop talking and let's go to Q's and A's. So our first question was, I think to Roger, but probably Andre as well. What kind of camera do you guys use underwater? Roger, do you want to respond first and then we'll get Andre?
Sure. So nothing really fancy. I use the A7 III Sony full frame. That's it.
Yeah, so currently shooting on a red Gemini or in a Gates housing or a Canon R5, but some of the documentary was shot on previous camera, which is a GH5. Yeah, again, obviously underwater housing and usually wide-ish lens.
Awesome. This is probably best for Roger. Do you notice any variation in how body language presents among different types of sharks?
Yes. So they look different. So the baseline is different among different species. That's one thing. There's also variation with the size. So smaller sharks will be prone to do more agonistic behavior because they feel threatened more often. Bigger sharks, they look more relaxed, even in situations that they are not that relaxed.
Have you found certain species to be more skittish or easily antagonized?
Yes, the reef species are really skittish. In general, most sharks are skittish. And hammerheads are very skittish. Almost everything is skittish in that realm. Imagine sharks as cats, so that's a good analogy. So they don't want to be very noticed. Well, except for the cuddles, of course. You don't cuddle sharks, but they like to play low, and yeah, they don't want to be approached. So they are, most of them are skittish. That's why, for example, I love to interact with gray nurses or sand tigers, as you call them, in the US, because they're a little bit the opposite. They stay put during the day, and it's really easy to interact with them, and they share the same body language as other sharks.
So Roger, we have one question. He says, not trying to be funny, but wondering about the idea of punching a shark in the nose or poking in the eyes if things get a bit full on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's something that oftentimes you don't have to teach people to do. If you're getting a very advanced interaction and the shark is really into you, you will naturally do that. It's not a good idea to start interaction with because it can backfire, of course. But as a last resource, yeah, of course. Most of the time they will withdraw from the bite, for example, if they get punched hard in the areas that have sensory organs, which is the snout and the eyes. But it's as a last resource, and probably most of us won't try that until it's necessary.
Yeah. So why does the government persist? This is rather more for Andre, probably. Is it because they believe the public perception of doing drum lines as a physical thing is more important than seeming to do nothing?
Short answer is yeah, absolutely. It's 100% a political issue, is what it boils down to. It seems that facts don't really matter here. Science doesn't really matter here. It is what if they can spin this program to have the perception of working, or to have the perception that they were doing something, then they've done their job and their backside's covered, and that's the politically safe thing to do. I personally think that if you were a proactive politician, or even just a politician that did your job properly, you would modernize the program and you would put positive spin and positive messaging around that to say, hey, we're moving with the times, we're learning to coexist, we are using the best technology, we're listening to the best science, we're becoming global leaders in shark bite mitigation. Like, that would be the positive spin that I would put on it. But yeah, look, both these programs in both these states, in New South Wales and Queensland, they are run by the Fisheries Department. So the Department of Primary Industries, which includes fisheries. So yeah, how do I put it politely? You've not got the most proactive politicians, or politicians that particularly value the animal of the life of an animal. Yeah, you've got politicians that want to appear that they're doing something, and that'll do them.
I'm going to do a follow-up question on that. And is there any legislation or any political movement to transition away from these drum lines?
I look, both states, New South Wales and Queensland, get lumped in the same basket because they both still kill sharks. They still both have a lethal element to their mitigation strategy. I do have to say, though, in credit to New South Wales, they are more proactive. There's more drones happening there. There's more non-lethal solutions being tried. And there is a real strong movement at the moment in New South Wales to not put the nets back in. So in New South Wales, nets come out for whale season, which is right now, because they're a huge entanglement risk to humpback whales. They come out for half the year. They're out currently. There's a huge movement right now and a huge push to have them not go back in. Local councils, so the actual local government area on each beach that has nets and drumlines, most of them just in the last few weeks have formally voted as a council to say, we do not want these in our area. Please do not put them back in again, DPI, which is DPI is the state government. So there's a huge push at the moment in New South Wales. Whether they'll listen or not is the $1 million question. In Queensland, they're so firmly got their heads in the sand, and their fingers in their ears, and they just don't want to hear about this. It's just kill sharks, kill sharks, kill sharks, kill sharks, kill more sharks. They've even now their messaging, they've pivoted to just bragging about how many sharks they've killed each month to imply that they're doing something, even though the stats say it doesn't work. But there is a big movement, and there's a big movement, and it's growing, and that's why I made the film, as a tool to, I guess, spark that movement into the next level. That's all the film is. It's a tool to educate and inspire people to speak out against this. And if it does its job, if it does that, then it's done its job, and if it doesn't, then it hasn't.
Were drumlines used elsewhere historically? I've heard of them and thought they were just nets along beach areas when I was younger.
So there's two kinds of drum lines. Traditional drum lines, which are just a hook with bait on it, and it kills the shark. And when the contractor comes to rebait it, if the shark's not dead yet, they will kill it. But there's a new development called a smart drum line, which essentially has a SIM card in it and sends a message when something's been hooked. And that's a tag and release program. So they will come, tag the shark, relocate it away from that beach, and release the shark. So Queensland only uses traditional drum lines, or dumb drum lines, as I like to call them. New South Wales are using smart drum lines. Brazil, one area of Brazil, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Recife or Recife, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. Yeah, they use smart drum lines with a tag and release and relocate program. But look, traditionally it's been nets most places. South Africa is a mix of nets and drum lines. But yeah, nets are a huge part of the strategy and the biggest problem, because they have so much bycatch. Traditional drum lines, pretty bad. Smart drum lines, getting better.
Great. There are really controversial shark programs in Western Australia, which have stopped using nets now. I wonder why Western Australia wasn't covered in the documentary. I know you can't cover everything, but I wondered if the Western Australia situation was much different than Queensland and New South Wales.
So Western Australia was a trial in 2014 of a lethal program. So it was a catch and kill program. And it was abandoned after 3 months or so due to public outrage. We very ever so briefly cover it in the credits. As the credits roll, we kind of, using news clips, we show a timeline of what happened in WA, which is they announced a cull, protest. They pulled the pin on their cull. That's the lethal shark mitigation history of Western Australia. And yeah, you're quite right. We didn't go into it in the body of the documentary, but we show it as a case study of how this battle can be won in the credits. As for currently, yeah, look, their program currently has its pros, has its cons, but it's not a lethal program. It's not a cull. So we didn't really cover it too much, other than, for example, we visit Cottesloe Beach when they were installing a shark barrier there, and we spoke to the company installing it. We filmed the install. We showed it as one of the progressive, positive, non-lethal ways you can go about a program. But yeah, you're quite right. We didn't go too deep into the WA thing, other than in the credits to use it as a case study of how this battle can be won, which is make noise.
And so that's our final question. How do we make noise? How do we get more involved in this cause in Australia? What can we do? What websites should we go visit? Where are people rallying?
Yeah, so watch the film, and then there's call to actions at the end of the film as well. Go to envoyfilm.com.au/act now. There's a petition, there's a letter writing campaign, there's an email sign up form to basically express your interest in taking part in activism when that starts. So at the moment, we're waiting for it to come out fully in Australia, as in on a streaming platform, which the deal is done. We're just waiting on them to pick a release date. Post that streaming release in Australia, which is when it will really, really reach the masses, especially because of, for example, the narrator, our fantastic narrator, Eric Banner. It's a very well-known voice and name in Australia. So we're hoping to really reach the masses, not just this conservation community. All of us, like, we're the important base, but we need to reach Joe Average. So after it's out in streaming in Australia, which should be within the next month or two, that is when protests and paddle outs and activism will start. So for now, sign up on the envoyfilm.com.au/act now page, do the petition, send an email to the ministers that are responsible for this, sign up for interest on protests and paddle outs, but they're not happening yet. Stay tuned.
I just want to add to that everybody can be an advocate for sharks, and the film Envoy is that they need an envoy, because currently we are killing 100 million sharks per year, and just in this 1 hour that we've had our forum, 11,000 sharks have died. So it's not just this shark hazard reduction program that is killing sharks, it's also fishing, it's also shark finning things. So there's a number of causes that we can get behind to be better advocates for sharks and to protect them, because we take out sharks at our peril, and we will see a great unraveling of the oceans, and we all depend on healthy oceans. So this is a really important, we just showed a snippet of a much wider critical conservation issue, and that's why we were compelled to have this forum specifically devoted to sharks, because it is getting to be such a critical issue. So I want to definitely thank our fabulous speakers, Roger and Andre, to my team for putting this together, for everybody that jumped on today to learn a little bit more about sharks. Please visit the Envoy Film Take Action area. We'll also be posting quite a lot more information about how people can get more involved and to become more stronger advocates for sharks. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please learn more about our network by visiting wildlifecoexistence.org. Thanks very much.
Lou, before we close, Roger, we have had a request for the comparison picture again, that they'd like to share it on social media. Would that be okay with you?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Great. And Geethan asked if we are recording this, and yes, indeed we are. She says we have a free diving group chat here on Sydney, and a few people through it started at 8, or some people thought this started at 10:30, so missed the start. So yes, and we apologize for that. We're operating between the East Coast of the United States and Australia, and we got ourselves a little confused on the timing. So try and be better about that next time. But we have recorded it, and we will be sharing the recording.
Yeah, the recording will probably be up, correct me if I'm wrong, Alison, in the next week or so. So we'll definitely be sharing that.
In the next day or two. Oh. Yep.
And when we follow up, if you guys came through on Evite, we'll send a follow-up thank you with the link to the recording, and we'll also share a link to it on Facebook. So we'll try and cover all our bases with sharing this. And Roger and Andre, feel free to share. We'll give you a link and feel free to share it. Anybody else who's on this and wants to share the recording with others, as Andre said, that's, the most important thing here is to get this information out far and wide. So, please share it around to anybody who you think might be interested.
Thank you very much. And please, if you're in the UK or the US, you can see Andre's film Envoy on Discovery Plus. And as he mentioned, there'll be a streaming, I think in September or October, or you can pay per view. It's worth watching it. It's like $20 or something. It's worth every penny to educate yourself.